There is a moment so quiet you could mistake it for nothing at all. The clock still ticks, the kettle still hums, the city still breathes beyond the window, yet something inside your chest leans away from the world. And you know without knowing how that a season is turned. The messages arrive later. The warmth leaves the room without opening the door. A name that once steadied you begins to tremble like a coin held too long between fingers. You tell yourself not to look for omens, not to read the tea leaves of silence. But there it is, a small dusk falling over everything familiar. It does not begin with catastrophe, only with the ache of delay. He answers, but with fewer words. He laughs, but not from the same place. The days that once braided themselves around your shared attention now slip loose strand by strand. You go about the ordinary rituals, keys, pockets, breath, while your mind drifts to that glowing screen where his absence has learned to spell itself in blue-gray light. Somewhere in you, a child reaches toward a closing door. Somewhere else, an older self folds her hands and refuses to run. You tell yourself it is nothing, and then you tell yourself it is everything. Minutes become the long corridors of a museum in which each painting is a scene. You replay the time. His hand lingered, the time he looked away, the last conversation with its strange thinness like soup watered down. You dissect your sentences, searching for the seed of a mistake. The mind loves its loot of explanations. It would rather be accused than be lost. Fear plays cartographer, drawing maps to old injuries, not just the loss of a man, but the loss of a hoped-for future. A table set for two, a holiday, imagined into being the promise of a warm light, waiting when you return. The future breaks in silence, and the shards are invisible. You begin to do the most human thing. You reach. You write that second message, then the third. You offer reasons to meet. You contort your schedule into the shape of his absence, as if flexibility were a spell that could bind a drifting tide. But what you offer from fear returns as pressure. And pressure is the weakest voice in the language of love. You can feel it, even as you press send the way need makes the air heavy. How a heart pleading to be seen becomes in the other's eyes a burden to be set down. It is not that you are wrong to want, only that wanting poured through panic becomes a blunt instrument. Desire is a wild, bright animal. Put it in a cage of anxious texts, and it loses the shine for which it was named. Somewhere beneath the noise, another truth waits. Like a lamp on a nightstand, everything clutched too tightly will find a seam and slip. Not because it despises you, not because you are unworthy, but because life refuses to be held by fear. Love refuses to be proven under a trembling hand. So you stop. Not forever, not as a strategy to win, but as a sacrament. Silence at first is a room with the lights off. Your body reaches for the familiar switch and finds an empty wall. But then your eyes adjust. The outlines return. The bed, the window, the small plant. You forgot to water the book on the chair with its ribbon marking a page you promised yourself you'd revisit. You begin to notice that your life is not a hallway toward someone else's arrival. It is a house with many rooms you have not entered in years. In the quiet, you turn the handle. You remember a version of yourself who never begged the world to stay. You listen to the thrum beneath your ribs and hear not a countdown, but a drum. If he returns, it will not be because your silence trapped him. It will be because your center grew a gravity of its own. And if he does not, then you will not be left empty. You will be left with yourself, which is to say, with the beginning. In the first days of quiet, the silence feels like a punishment. It presses against your chest like the weight of unsent words. You count the hours without his name, lighting your screen, measure the distance between his last message and your restraint. Every minute is a battle between the urge to reach and the discipline to remain still. The body wants to act it, craves the comfort of doing, but the soul knows that healing does not come from motion, it comes from presence. There is an invisible trembling that happens when we stop chasing. The hands that once typed, the mind that once planned, the heart that once negotiated for affection, all of it must now sit with the unbearable simplicity of waiting. not for him, but for the self that was lost in the chase. Jung once wrote that what we resist persists, and what we accept transforms. And in this stillness, you begin to see what he meant. The silence is not an absence, it is a mirror. It shows you how much of your worth had been built from reflection, how long you have lived inside someone else's gaze, mistaking their attention for sunlight. There is a night when you cry without trying to stop it, and something begins to uncoil. Not sorrow exactly, but a recognition. You realize how deeply you had been taught that love must be proven through effort, that to be chosen, you must earn it by shrinking, by softening, by apologizing for the space you take. The world told you that the more available you become, the more secure you will feel. But the truth moves differently. What is offered in excess becomes invisible. What is scarce, what holds its mystery, invites reverence. You remember this not as manipulation, but as nature itself. The ocean is beautiful because it cannot be held. The moon draws desire not because it follows, but because it remains untouchable, radiant in her own orbit. To reclaim your center is not to grow cold. It is to return to the rhythm of the tides, to understand that love flows toward what is whole, not what is hollowed by need. So you begin the quiet work of rebuilding the inner architecture of your life. You water the plant. You go for a walk without checking your phone. You cook for yourself and notice the color of the flame. You read the page you once left unfinished, and in the margin, you find your own handwriting, something you'd forgotten you'd written. Remember who you were before you were waiting. That sentence stays with you. It becomes a small lantern for the days when your mind still wanders to him, to the what-ifs and maybes. You let the thought come and go like weather. You stop believing that your peace depends on his return. You begin to sense that the love you wanted from him was at its core a mirror for the love you had abandoned in yourself. In time, you notice that the ache changes shape. It softens into understanding. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head. You stop scrolling through memories like an archaeologist of heartbreak. You begin instead to cultivate your own garden, to invest in friendships that nourish rather than deplete, to return to your passions, to create beauty without the need for witnesses. It is not indifference that grows inside you. It is dignity. And dignity is the soil where peace takes root. You start to see that silence was never about punishing him. It was about saving yourself from the noise of fear. Because love that must be begged for is not love. It is dependency dressed in longing. And one morning, without ceremony, you wake up and realize you haven't thought about him in days. The absence no longer hurts. It hums quietly like space newly cleared for something sacred to arrive. You look in the mirror and see someone not waiting to be chosen, but someone who has already chosen herself. There comes a morning when sunlight spills across the sheets, and for the first time in weeks, it feels gentle instead of accusatory. The silence that once felt unbearable has become a kind of companion, still vast and strangely kind. It no longer presses against your chest. It breathes with you. Somewhere between the tears and the quiet breakfasts alone, you have crossed a threshold so subtle it could only be felt, not seen. You have moved from needing to be loved to learning what it means to love yourself in the absence of validation. It is in this fragile rebirth that you begin to understand what true transformation looks like. It does not arrive with a flash of enlightenment or a new lover who teaches you how to heal. It arrives in the way you reach for a cup, in how you walk into a room, in the way you exhale before speaking. The anxiety that once lived in your body begins to loosen its grip, and in its place grows something quieter, but infinitely stronger, a kind of sacred self-trust. When a woman returns to herself after chasing love that has gone cold, she does not come back as she was. She returns tempered. There is a new clarity behind her eyes, not born of bitterness, but of seeing through the illusions that once bound her. Jung wrote that everything we deny in ourselves becomes our fate. And as you begin to face your own need for approval, your own hunger to be chosen, you see that it was never about him. It was about a forgotten conversation between your worth and your fear. You mistook his absence for your insufficiency, when in truth it was an invitation, a silent call to remember your own depth. You begin to understand that attraction has never been about control. It's about resonance. The energy you emit when you are centered is magnetic in a way no performance can replicate. You can sense it in others now too, the quiet confidence of those who have stopped begging the world to stay the peace in people who no longer chase what is leaving. That peace is not resignation. It is mastery. And in this mastery, you rediscover beauty in places you had overlooked. The small rain tapping against the window becomes music. The sound of your own footsteps feels grounding. You no longer need the echo of someone else's approval to make your life feel significant. You are living from the inside out now, and the world responds differently to that frequency. It's not that men stop noticing you, it's that the kind of man who notices changes. The ones drawn to dependency begin to drift away, unable to meet the steadiness of your presence. Those who thrive on the chase lose interest because you no longer play the game of scarcity. And then there are the few, those who see not a need to be filled, but a universe to explore. They do not come to complete you, they come because they sense that being near your wholeness will call forth their own. And yet the beauty of this new chapter is that even if no one comes, you do not feel lacking. You have learned the quiet alchemy of solitude. You've discovered that being alone is not a punishment, but a privilege, the chance to hear the sound of your own soul without interruption. You walk through the world differently now, not because you are hardened, but because you have softened in the right places. You carry your boundaries like silk, not armor. The woman who once begged to be chosen now chooses herself over and over every morning, every breath. She does not perform her worth, she inhabits it. Her silence is no longer a void, it is her temple. And from within it, she begins to live again, not as an echo, but as a voice. There is something extraordinary that happens when you no longer need to prove your worth. The air around you changes. Conversations feel lighter. Your laughter, once something you offered as proof of your ease, now rings from a deeper place. It is not the laughter of performance, but of peace. You begin to notice that your presence alone shifts the energy of a room, not because you demand attention, but because you are no longer trying to earn it. The world, it seems, bends differently around a woman who belongs to herself. She walks not faster, not louder, but steadier. Her attention, once scattered in the pursuit of being loved, becomes a beam of quiet power. And wherever it falls, on a friend's story, on her work, on the art of simply existing, it gives life instead of depleting it. This is the miracle of returning to yourself. What once drained you now fuels you. What once frightened you now fascinates you. There are moments, of course, when the old ache resurfaces. A song, a scent, the glimpse of someone's familiar profile across the street. But now, instead of tightening, you breathe. You smile sometimes sadly, sometimes softly, knowing that even the longing has transformed. It no longer feels like a wound. It feels like a scar, evidence of healing, proof that you have lived deeply. Jung once said that the soul becomes its own healer when it embraces what it once feared to feel. And that is what you are doing now, transmuting memory into meaning. You realize that love at its truest cannot be lost. It can only change form. What once existed between you and him now lives as wisdom beneath your ribs, as gentleness in your tone, as discernment in the way you choose. You are no longer chasing the mirage of permanence. You are living the truth of flow. People come, people go. But the current within you remains. And so your focus shifts outward, not in search, but in creation. You begin to pour yourself into the things that make your spirit expand. You write without waiting for a reader. You move your body not to be admired, but to feel alive within it. You reconnect with friends you had neglected, laugh until your stomach hurts, and remember what joy feels like when it isn't measured against anyone's approval. The world opens like a book you had forgotten you owned, and every page seems to whisper, "This too is love." When people meet you now, they sense something different. Not perfection, not untouchable strength, but presence. The kind that says, I am whole, even when I am uncertain. They are drawn not to what you offer them, but to the way you hold yourself. There is gravity in serenity. You no longer fill the silence with explanations or chase closure where none is offered. You understand that not every story needs a tidy ending. Some are meant to awaken you, not accompany you. And still you remain open. You do not build walls, only gates strong enough to protect, soft enough to open for those who knock with sincerity. This is not indifference, it is discernment. You can love without losing yourself now. You can give without depletion. The power that once leaked through your longing now hums quietly within you, a steady flame that no longer flickers at the breath of another's absence. This is what it means to rise not in defiance, but in grace. To live as if every heartbreak was a teacher, every silence a lesson, every loss an initiation into your own strength. You are no longer afraid of being alone because solitude has become sacred ground, the place where your soul meets itself and remembers why it came here in the first place. There comes a point when the lesson no longer feels like a lesson, it simply becomes your way of being. The silence you once feared has turned into your sanctuary. The woman who used to wake with her heart clenched now rises with a kind of calm that needs no justification. The sun filters through the curtains, and you don't rush to check your phone. You breathe first. You thank the morning. You meet yourself before meeting the world. It is here in this still and luminous place that you finally understand what it means to live from self-love, not self-defense. You are not protecting yourself from pain anymore. You are expanding into peace. There is no bitterness in your distance, no pride in your restraint. Only the quiet recognition that love cannot be sustained by fear, that attention earned through anxiety is too fragile to build upon. You no longer crave reassurance. You have become your own proof. This is the alchemy of solitude. What began as loss has transfigured into light. The energy you once directed outward pleading, proving performing now flows inward, feeding your mind, your creativity, your body, your joy. You are not harder now, you are softer in the way rivers carve canyons, unyielding, not through resistance, but through persistence. That softness, that endurance becomes your strength. And then something subtle happens. The world begins to mirror your transformation. People start to approach differently. Conversations feel richer. Opportunities appear without the frantic energy of pursuit. You are no longer chasing life. You are allowing it. You have become magnetic, not because you seek to attract, but because you no longer need to. Desire, as Jung observed, arises from the tension between what we have and what we reach for. And now you live in that sacred space effortlessly. You are content yet still curious, full yet open. Perhaps he returns, perhaps he doesn't. It no longer defines the story. If he does, he finds a woman reborn not in defiance, but in radiance. Someone who loves deeply but without dependency. Someone whose silence no longer punishes but teaches. If he doesn't, you still win because the real return has already happened, the return to your own heart. You have remembered that your worth was never a reflection in another's eyes, but a fire that burns quietly within you, constant and self-sustaining. You move through the world now with grace, aware of your power, but never wielding it to control. You have learned the art of being still without being stagnant, of being open without being emptied. Your presence has weight not heavy but grounding. Those who meet you feel it, the quiet confidence of someone who no longer seeks permission to exist fully. You are no longer the echo of someone's affection. You are the voice of your own becoming. And in the end, you understand that all of this, the ache, the silence, the unraveling, was never about losing him. It was about remembering you. Every heartbreak, every unanswered message, every night spent wrestling with absence was a doorway. Through it, you stepped into a larger truth. You were never meant to be completed by love. You were meant to embody it. So if there is a message that remains, it is this: stop trying to be chosen. Choose yourself. Stop running after what drifts away. Turn inward and meet the woman waiting there, the one who has been whispering all along that you were enough. You will see that the love you feared to lose was only ever the reflection of what already lived within you. And when you finally know this not in theory but in your bones, you will move through life differently. You will give without losing love, without clinging, and speak without fear of silence. Because now you understand what is truly yours will recognize you by the light you carry, and what is not will fade without taking anything from you. If this journey spoke to you, if it helped you remember your own strength and serenity, take a moment to share it. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment about where you are on your path of becoming. Every story of awakening reminds another soul that healing is possible.